Alright, that one's okay. Sangye Jumne Digi, and Jike Gapa Mepala Soba, and Tashi Taketan Jabi, and the Tenjin Jawa Chong Namsha, Tenje, and Taketan Dombe Domba Nida, and Raji Dube Domba Nire, and this Chasan, and Tenjin Jawa Dam Dustine, Somba Resine, and the Somba Demasami Jumne Digi. Rangwang do sumba res rang chala matyo ba rangi top ki sumbe ki res na ko muluru ki tene an sang yum de la ando shin de cha se be ki di jung di don na ki sin di she sarwang.
And good evening. So last week we looked at this quotation from Arya Nagarjuna from the homage from his fundamental wisdom of the Middle Way, where he praised Buddha Shakyamuni for having taught that all impermanent phenomena arise dependently. There is no inherent ceasing, no inherent arising, no inherent severing, and so forth. And in this way, through establishing that all phenomena arise dependently and do not exist by way of their own inherent nature, Buddha Shakyamuni was praised, and moreover, Nagarjuna praised him for having taught this based on his own faultless experience, not on something that he had seen or heard, but based on his own faultless experience.
Denege Sanjigi, Denege Songwa de, and those Chinangan Jugi Shimju Cheche, and Songwa Nashin, and the Chigi Sanjigi, Denege Soya de Yang Garijin Sungor Sene, that as Semja Tamji. Koyu Dungale Jaye, Tardu and Nele, you go on to ya, Nele, Tarvata, Tamji Kimbo go on to ya, Dona Sombari, Tis not the Negi, Tabi to be sure, Tabda Deba Sumba in the Negi Sanji Sung de, Sumbeke, Sumbe Sung de la Dine, and as a Dumba Sanji Jimne de, and Dumba Semeki in Bade, and I was never knew or essay.
Moreover, as we saw in the commentary from His Holiness following that quotation, it's our responsibility to come to understand well the meaning behind what is presented in that verse, and then to think about it, to investigate it for ourselves, because this will give us deep trust in what the Buddha taught. We'll come to see that definite goodness, which is another way of expressing liberation and enlightenment, is actually attainable. And through recognizing that liberation and enlightenment, or definite goodness, is actually attainable through having understood emptiness, we will also develop strong trust that high status, or as usually expressed as good rebirths, are possible. And in this way, we come to have unwavering trust or faith in the teachings of the Buddha.
That didn't direction. And Jiki do young, sir. Jiki do, but then Chiki Jabe, Namdele, essay. The Benedigo Rebigate, Tema Namde Nama, and do soon your regere. And then that Jiki do set the answer to Radak, Dene, doing the city Garsonas, Joe de la Miluchir, Shella Chiso Papa incident, that Benedigo Rebigate, Tema Namde Nana, the soon your regere.
Now, turning to the text, the middle page 24, starting where we concluded last week by looking at a quotation from the glorious Dhammakirti. That's a quotation from his commentary on Dignagas, commentary on valid cognizers. Because of being unerring with regard to the principal meaning, it can be inferred with regard to others.
Dalai, Takara Sungorasene, so Jugi, Semjen Temjigi, Semjen Zugi, Zo de Caresena, Zu, Kui Dunga Tada Leche, and then Gele Togore, and the Tarpa Togore, and the Sajiko Togores, Chisangele Togori, then Jugi, Angela Dingi, the hot Togore, and Semjengi, Dunda, Zo Chirua, then the Dunga Tamjele, Segoedi, and the Semjen Tamjigi. That mute and Masona, so the Chichagoro, Dunga Tada, then Jawa, and Dingy Dewa Toyadi, 디제스 제사디 토베디 지게 지금 저와 코발레 저와 대비기 sem전 탐지기 미위디디레스 거로와.
Just before I come to Genda's commentary, the word we have here is unerring. In the Lori context, we know this as infallible. In other contexts, it's translated as non-deceptive. But here, I've translated it as unerring. Now to Genda's commentary. So looking at the first word in the Tibetan, which is the principal meaning. The principal meaning, we can understand it to be the principal meaning of the Dharma, which is to fulfill the deep-held need that all beings have to attain a state of lasting happiness, a state that is not punctuated by even a moment of pain or misery. And so that is the deep-felt need within beings that the Buddha Dharma principally resolves through presenting how to attain liberation and enlightenment. So principal meaning we can also translate as primary goal or primary objective. Primary objective. So you could say here too, express it differently. The primary objective or the principal meaning of the Dharma is how to attain or the attainment of liberation and enlightenment.
Dine zada juge disada dona ningbodi tarba dunyara korwalu jowa dubanam ji miuzo di ngele dire ngele dire hesiro. Sesa ngele seadela dinala tarba da tamji kimbe goba niga yungore. Disada ngele tarba seadi nyomoba sabona jeba bangje ane bang bacha ma bangje nyomoba sabona jebe bangbe bangba ane gorendi bangbe ko gotendeda tarbi고 봐서 tar바세 오래 tar바세 디제 나 녀모바 사번 집어 빵바마제 녀모바 바샤다 집어 빵베 빵바디 안디야나 녜레 타르두 녜룩세데다 나제네 미니베 냥데세로다 미니베 냥데세 제자다 디네자 녜레 제라 tar비고 봐시다 미니베 냥데고 봐 니제 디니데라다 녜레 아사 디시고로와.
The principal meaning or the primary objective, the principal objective, is the attainment of, as we saw in the paragraph above, definite goodness. Definite goodness usually just means liberation, but in the context of this text we can understand it to mean both liberation and enlightenment. The attainment then of liberation comes about through the complete abandonment of the afflictions together with their seeds. Not the imprints of the afflictions, but the seeds of the afflictions. Should the imprints also be abandoned, so the afflictions together with their seeds and imprints, then non-abiding nirvana or enlightenment is achieved. Therefore, we can understand that the principal meaning, the primary objective, is the attainment of definite goodness, liberation or enlightenment.
지게 톱자 탈두게 탈바다 탐지 김배고 마들이에서 데다 상이 녜레들이에서는 상이 숨바로 와서.
This has been taught by the Buddha, definite goodness, or as we usually express it, liberation and enlightenment. It's taught by the Buddha, and that is the principal meaning of the Dharma, the primary objective.
안데니 자다나 데니게 탈두게 녜레데 토비알라 가르 냠솔랑고레 랑자 가르 도르자 가르에세 세지마다 지키레도야 산이기 디도고 고레 디냠소 랭고고레 세다 랑자당 도르시긴 냠렌제 네디 산이 순고레.
To fulfill the primary objective of the Dharma, definite goodness, the Buddha also taught what practices should be engaged in and express it like this, what virtuous minds should be cultivated or adopted, and what are the unwholesome minds which are to be abandoned. So in brief, the Buddha also taught the method of what should be adopted and what should be abandoned.
제상 탈바당 탐지키며 토백의 냠린제기 아주기 냠솔 돌아고야 돼 냠솔랑게 쪼어디 가래스나다 쪼여돼서 쪼어디 가래랍나 덴바시들이 해서 올다 동아 덴바시들이 해서 어디 숨어래 해지래.
And this was taught in the initial teaching within the Four Noble Truths. What should be abandoned and what should be adopted.
다 덴바시를 송화인상 가르르에서나 저기 동아 세알이야 동아의 모처고 그래 동아의 신고 그래서 제가 동아 뭐 맞춰 봤나 아주 동아를 매봐 쇠타신 말했어 제가 동아의 뭐 당봉 동아들의 탈도가 섬로코나 리기 말했어 제가 동아 모처고 그래서 다 동아 날에 동아다 유에 동아 캬바두지 동아니네 당아주 동아되기 아주 모처고 그래 이네 다 캬바두지 동아 소디딩 아주 모처고 말 띵고 캬바두지 봐지 동아도 동아인 받은 아주 신고 그래서 디 파신고 그래서
In the Four Noble Truths, initially it's said right at the outset that before one can eradicate suffering, one has to give rise to a wish for liberation. But in order to give rise to a wish for liberation, one has to first recognize what is meant by suffering. Suffering needs to be known, it needs to be understood, it needs to be recognized. Without this vivid recognition, the wish to be liberated from suffering cannot arise. Therefore, liberation would be impossible. Suffering can be divided in many ways, most commonly into the threefold division: the suffering of physical mental pain, the suffering of transient happiness, and thirdly, all-pervasive suffering. And of these three, all-pervasive suffering is unknown to us. This too, like the other two divisions, have to be known, to be recognized by us.
지사다 동아리 야고 모처봐 있나다 캬바두지 동아리 야고 저기 차고 모처봐 있나 다디 아니 규가를 때는 용어 끼엔가를 때는 용고래스네 바직 용타도 봐 아니 그 매바 쇠고 해서 내 매바 쇠야리야 규단 끼엔가를 때는 용고도 심심주셔도 제가 디 아니 동아리 캬바두지 동아리 근데 가를 때는 것은 군주된 바세야 돼. 용거 받대. 군주된 바다 하고 그래서 지상 군주된 바세인도다 군주된 바데 가르라네. 레기 군주나 녀모베 군주. 당한 저기 레다 녀모옹에 깨와 렘바즈 류팀. 규 레다 녀모바데 레라테네 깨와 렘바. 레디야 군주론치기 규 녀모다 녀모베 군데라 텔레테네 깨와 렘바레스. 두세네 심주치 유 군주된 바데 체명해 봐 예고 그래 하고 그래서 그래. 대대시 동아다 모시에서 받으셔. 다디 규가를 때는 저는 군주된 발이 제가 규들을 군주래다 녀모 받을 때는 용거 받이 내가 세명에 봐 오래시.
Suffering needs to be known, and it needs to be known in a way that through valid cognition, it needs to be known in a way that's vivid and clear and transformative. Because it's only through knowing, to clearly knowing suffering, that one will be successful in coming to recognize the causes of suffering. To the extent that we know suffering, we will strive to come to recognize the causes that lead to suffering. This too needs to be known with valid cognition in order to be able later to abandon these causes. So the causes of our suffering are contaminated karma accumulated through our afflictions. These are our true origins. True suffering, we understand through the threefold division. True origins, we need to also come to recognize so that we can abandon it, recognize through valid cognition. And the true origins is karma accumulated under the influence of afflicted minds.
다디네 그 교군 일에다 녀몽바 텔레중도 녀몽바디 나나데 녀몽바래 되샤다 데네기 녀몽바 텔레 나 녀몽베 나데 제위기 교 타투바디 녀몽바데 가레라자 다신 가사 다도 주바스메 다신 마릭바디 레샤스메 다신 마릭바디 통여되다 군준 템비기 규조디 뭐가 동아녀야 교 군주 템바레 군주 템비 나는 규나네 다 조어 자와디 하고 그래서 다선에 되는 중화디.
And in our coming to recognize the causes of our suffering, we need to go down to the very root cause from which all our afflictions arise. We need to recognize for ourselves that this is the ignorance of self-grasping. The root cause of all our suffering is the ignorance of self-grasping.
규제위 규다진디기 가르 진샤시비기 유데라 진바나 신시 두개 민도 세데 제바지야 차고래 다디디 다센세디 남가지 팅규불라셔데 가사 다센세디 템버주바 진메텐신키 시거와 다디디 템버주바마 진바마레 가사 란제 튜비스 진바세 고고 가사 다센세디 가사 란제 튜비스 진바디 델고 고래 지산다 디기 가사디 풍보라마도 랑원이 주바 진바 진바 나신 두개 민도 제바 제야도 다 강라마도 진바 나신지 매바 되니게 다진도 로록신 바 통해도 진바 나신 매바 통고래 로록신 바 통 로록신 바 통해도 다디 가사 다진의 뻥 두고 여바데 될이야 아니 년보 여바 통고래 년보 여바 통해 가사 다진 뻥배 뻥버 여바디 통고래 대통령도 타르바 여바 또고래지 타르바 여바 또고래지
What I'm hoping will become very clear for you is that there is a sequence of training that independence on the quality of the training of the prior steps, the later realizations will come about ever more powerfully. First, we need to recognize, to know suffering. Independence on the power of that realization, we will strive to recognize the causes of our suffering, because through recognizing how we suffer, or the pervasive nature of suffering, to the extent we recognize that, to that extent we will want to abandon suffering and therefore strive to recognize the causes and abandon them. So there's this sequence of dependency between true sufferings, true origins, and this continues. Because when we come to recognize for ourselves that self-grasping is what keeps us bound, that is, we'll have the strong determination to ensure we don't come under its influence. So this comes about through understanding intellectually that we grasp at the self as existing in the way that it doesn't appear, that it doesn't exist. But this we need to recognize for ourselves. So we first see, how does the self appear? And then we are able to investigate to see whether it exists in the way that it appears or not. And here, in the context of the Prasangika tenets, they would say that this grasping at the self as existing by way of its own nature is not in accordance with reality, it's an ignorance, and it is innate. It's not acquired, it's innate. So therefore, the root cause of our suffering is the innate ignorance grasping at the self as existing by way of its own nature. And when we come to recognize for ourselves that this is a wrong consciousness, so we realize that it is a wrong consciousness, this ignorance, this innate ignorance of self-grasping, we will then know that it can be abandoned. We'll know it can be abandoned through the cultivation of its antidote, its direct antidote, the wisdom-realizing emptiness. And it's at this point we know liberation is possible, not merely intellectually, but we will know this with a clarity that leads to a resolve to attain freedom, because we will know for ourselves that it is possible.
Densi marik pala kwa ngure dade dasen marik pala dade dingan jo dasen marik pa sadi 조여든 라 밀루치르세 되네게 밴딩 잡에 송샤비기 디급기 다생기 조여든 라 밀루치르 대실로 하는 조여든 라 밀루치 현년지수 빠발레세 디급소 밴딩 잡에 송샤비기 코유자와 다생세야 되라 그한테 강사랑 유튜브에 다생을 고고고요래 해제래 지당 넘주는 지당 한 저기 코유자와 다생 말이 발라도 네 덴셀라 고추고래 안 가서래 랑게 투비스 주발라 고셔 책으로 와 땡큐베 기시가 되다 덴셀라 고고로 와 안에 지금 다음도 오말 시가 돼 랑게 투비스 주발라 고고로 봐 지난다데 가서는 저여들 밀루치르세 빼는 주기 잡에 손샤바디 코셈잠 받은 도디비기 투몽을 통해 송거래 땡큐블루 시가 말에 디인사 데 안저기 콜베자와 다세 말이 봐야 돼 간사랑게 투비스 주발라 고고로 해서 돼 콜베자와 다세 말이 봐 콜베 자와들 다신 마릭바세 다신 디어로와 디 다신들 가고 그것은 덴질로 고야요 말에 덴질 말에제 디 가사랑 유튜브에 제수트베 짐바들 고고래시 가사랑 유튜브에 제수트베 짐바 가사 야
helping with my recollection of the coarse and subtle objects of imagines, grasping at the self as I'm just not remembering the image as VI and SSE. I think I remember.
Grasping at the coarse one is
self-sufficient substantial. That's sometimes maybe. So looking at the quotation again, because of being unerring with regard to the principal meaning, it can be inferred with regard to others. So the way I've explained it is the way I've explained this quotation so far is the broader way to understand it. In the context of the text from which it's quoted, the commentary on valid cognizers, or the commentary to that, the meaning is about the ignorance of self-grasping. So here, the principal meaning refers to the ignorance of self-grasping. So that's the context in which it's being written. And this text is written not in accordance with the Prasangika view, it's written in accordance with the view of the Chittamatra, Sautrantika, and Vaibhashika views. So there it would refer to grasping at the self as being self-sufficient, substantially existent. So that would be their meaning in accordance with the text. Prasangika, though, or a holder of the view of the Prasangika, would read the same text and infer the meaning differently, to take it as meaning the ignorance of true grasping. However, someone who's reading it from the view of Chittamatra and below, they accept true grasping. So they would take it to refer to the ignorance of the self-sufficient, substantially existent self, because that is according to the view of Chittamatra and below, that needs to be abandoned in order to gain liberation. Whereas the Prasangika would understand it to mean the ignorance of true grasping, because that is the actual antidote.
dine zada kansa rangyo tipe sesu tipe zimba de lo lo she yinba to yang de de bang nu ba to de bang be bang ba tar ba yo ba to yang de dine ngele de to ba ro ngele asa tar ba to ba tar ba tong go ro ba 지사다 타바톤 오다디 톱나 다 녀모바 차산 빵비게 빵도 동아 탐제를 빵 탈구도 동아다 유군지 대바텔 탈구도 빵배 빵바 도와 선배 통해도 다디 톱고도 선배 돈역이 듬바게도 다 가래 진짜 간스 톱고래서 람 콤발렌 톱고래 해서지 람 냠는 진 톱고래 해서지 람된디 바순 거래 동아 덴바다 동아 덴베 유군주 덴바니 디빵고로와다 제자디 방비 먼저 방고에서 방비에 탈바 여바 또 이디 방 두구도 제자다 방 두구도 셈비 방비에 탈바 여바 통완자 다디 방고도 제자디 방비에 탈바 톱고도 셈비 되니르기에도 다는 탈바디 토비알이야 디네 방비에 탈바 토비알에 간스 탑간이 토보레선 람곰발레틴 토고레 시드라 람데 마순고레 제 람데데.
Here, the person has come to recognize that liberation is possible. They've given rise, firstly, to the determination to abandon suffering. They've then come to recognize the causes, and they've recognized to the extent the causes of suffering, to the extent that they realize that the ignorance that is binding one into samsara, so that would either be depending on the tenets, the ignorance of true grasping, or the ignorance grasping at the self as being self-sufficient, substantially existent. They would recognize that this can be abandoned through cultivating the direct antidote of emptiness. And therefore, definite goodness, liberation, is attainable. So this now is vividly perceived by the practitioner. And therefore, they turn to true paths, the method for attaining liberation, for attaining definite goodness.
제사다 데니기 당에 탈바세디 탈바세 토야래요. 그냥 군주다 동아다 동아유 군주대 방비 꼭된데 토야래야 탑람 가서 람공마 토고 그래서 다 데니기 람공에 토야도 당한 주기 더 군노 소스라랑 탈바잠 탐지kimbe semje 탐지게 된다 등이 갈래가버려. 다 소소라랑 코에 동안에 줘야지 되는 타바 토고도 셈비 군에 랑제 람냠는 제제 아니 윤방바이나 아 저기 네 그래서 탈배고 봐도 토고 해제래. 다음 군어들야 소소라 집어서 마다데 랑 동아 타바나시 semje 탐지 동아나 자고 동아 유단시 봐 자고 제산디 자 토고도 제산디 네 semje 탐지게 된다야 탑시체 semja 탐지 동안 잡아는 게 제고도 대인장의 semja 탐지기 되는 사이 되네게 산주고파 요모 바샤다 제바 방비기 방바 토고도 sem비기 군론나제 군내나제 람냠는 제도 자주 sembe 람냠는 바 자고디 곰발라테는 달 안 산주고파도 메중기나네다 탈바당 탐지기면 이나네 탐지기면 고마도 두고래 지나다 나라 덴두신 덴시기 삼제바제 도요도 타바 토기요바 도요도 다 타바 토야디 람가르 냠는 지고 람데 람 냠는 지고 그래시데 다람 냠는 지 림바델레 어디까블라 소소라랑기 소소라라 지부 제긴 선배스 심지 탐지기 전에 뒤에 뭐고 거야다 안데니 제마토 바당 안데 지경살 델레 소소 지부니를 타바 토고 선배 삼다제 람 냠는 제 림바 조베나 안 타바 토부레제 다나 로제체 다다 나갈레 전화카나 심전 탐제다 직발에 다 심전 탐지기 동화셔야 된 디기도야 돼 두부도 제상이 디치기 삼제 심전 탐지기도 나 삼다쟁에 산조고바 도바지기 선배 삼다 줘야 돼다 잡아침비기 냠람년 주고 그랬지 지나다 예중디 토비에게 예레디 토비에게 람 냠는 제 림바 토고레서 다람 냠는 지 림바 델리도 갑라 소소 군론을 마소나 소소기 지구에 삼다지나 셈자 탐지게 되나 삼다 군론이 여반자 년주기 가소래 탈비람로 조한지다 산조고와 조연 냠내 시름바 이차용을 해지래.
The practitioners here come to the point of looking at the paths that need to be cultivated, and they've come here in dependence on having recognized with vivid clarity the causes that from which suffering originates, in particular the root cause of this, the ignorance that is the root cause of all suffering. And they came to this point in dependence on having meditated well or recognizing well suffering, understanding the pervasive nature of suffering. So there is this sequence here, and as each step is, to the extent that each step is developed within oneself, the next step will be that much stronger. So now, coming to the point of the path, where the practitioner has recognized that freedom from suffering is possible. because the cause has been identified and known to be a wrong consciousness, it is clearly understood that what needs to be cultivated is the antidote, and then liberation will be attained. So at this point here, the motivation of the practitioner, the motivation with which the practitioner has arrived at this point, here is of great importance. So this motivation would have been cultivated long before and strengthened throughout the series of trainings that's brought them to the point where they are going to actually strive to develop a path. So they'll either have come to the point of recognition that liberation is possible with an understanding now that liberation is possible. And if it's possible for me, it's possible for every mother sentient being. I can achieve liberation and guide others to achieve their own liberation. I can do this. It's not beyond me. And in fact, not only is it not beyond me, I have an obligation to do so. So here, at the point where the practitioner is about to embark on actually cultivating a path, the motivation under which they have been training thus far will determine that they're going to set out for the path of bodhisattvas. Another practitioner will have arrived at the same point and with the same understanding, because they have shared the same tenet, the same philosophical view, that liberation is possible for me, and it is possible for all beings. And whilst I can strive to become a Buddha and lead all beings to the state of enlightenment, this takes a great length of time and tremendous effort. This is something that I feel is overwhelming. It's too much for me. But I have to gain freedom, and I know I can, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to strive for my own individual liberation. And here they embark on the path of striving for liberation, rather than the former practitioner of enlightenment. So here, at this point of where they are going to embark on training in true paths, we see the influence of the motivation that they have been cultivating continuously throughout their training thus far.
Ando shenada dindoshe, and in Zada, Yazan Dinade Karasumuzo, Zoe Dunla Miluchis, Zoe Duen said, Zoe Duen, and then Nejo da Tarp, Nejung said, Kisan Dinyele, Joram Chima, Sonjaki to do Adinadba, Dunbegi, Rawan to be Nele Dang, Thubten Jeba, Manora Duen says to Adinele. Nele Thubten Jeba, Manora Dunbegi, Semi Gibur, Toana, said, Jesada, Nele said that Nyomo Bumpy, Bangpe Gordindi, Gaspo Bangbai, Tarba Tamjiki Bengele. Thubten Jeba Situda, Di Tovegi, Tablam Dilla, Dembashina, Gasore, Dunga Demba, Kunji Depani, Banja in Bashian, Delba, Jena, and Di, going Eledi, Tarbadi, Tovegi, Dundala, Tap Dicarson, Lamden Comia, Jena, Deni Comia, Denigi San Yutimba Sung Dida, Denigi, Zoe de la Miluchir, Sedu. Anzuku Koala Tarba Dibu, Dunyagi, Namgi, Miuzo, Tarba Topjadi, Neletis. The Nele, the Topjigi, Tablam Yamlin Jedi, Detma, Doriadi, Dungatim Batong, Kunji de Payata, and the Copa, the Toyaki Dundala, Lam Yamlin Jedis, and this Sanjiki Sunala, Sanji Sunvarege, the Ne Sanji Sundi, Miluares. Miluares, Sanji Sumbi Sundi, Miluares, Jesan Zoe Bendigo Sumbi Sundi, Miluares, Carasene, Sanji Dinu Sundi, Sumba Nashi, Donna Jeba Chidu, Data Donna Nede as Miluares.
Yep, when we look at this, the first line of the quotation, because of being unerring with regard to the principal meaning, let's also look at the commentary from His Holiness above, in the line halfway down in the paragraph. If Buddha is thus seen as a valid being whom without error taught definite goodness and the method to achieve it. So here in both His Holiness's commentary as well as the quotation, we see without error or unerring. Here, the practitioner has come to see the truth or the validity of the correctness of the Buddha's teachings through having come to know suffering, come to recognize suffering in all the pervasiveness of suffering. So long as one is bound in samsara, one suffers. This is known. Moreover, the practitioner has also come to recognize that suffering comes about in dependence on causes. And they've come to see those causes for themselves, the afflictions which lead to karma that ripens in suffering, and that those afflictions have an ignorance as their root cause. The practitioner has also come to see, the practitioner has seen that Buddha's teachings are unerring or are without error in terms of true sufferings as well as true origins. Moreover, they've seen that because the root cause of our suffering is a wrong consciousness, it can be abandoned. So they've understood that liberation is possible, definite goodness is possible for them. All that needs to be done is true paths that which culminate in the direct antidote of the wisdom understanding emptiness needs to be cultivated. So in this way, the practitioner has come to understand that the Buddha's teachings are without error, and therefore definite goodness is achievable. So this is how we come to see that the principal meaning, definite goodness or liberation and enlightenment, that is attainable because the teachings of the Buddha are without error, are faultless, are non-deceptive, or infallible. This then is the meaning of our first line.
And then that Dorje nala ba jube na kala wasna jige tobje ge zo we tuen se tobje ge tuen da zo ngele di se ngele sa zo we tuen tobje ge tuen da zo ngele di che di tobje ge tab nyamlen je ge rimba zo din shi ne lu di sa ji gi ma zu lia tab ma zu tuen da go e zo tab zo ka zo ma ju ge tobje zo tar du di ngele di Di sanji sung yore, sung bare. Chesada denigi topje zo ngele di topji tablam zo denshi nyamne rimba sung bare. Chesada denigi sung bigi sung di da sanji sung di milu bare, noju mare sung wane milu bare. Karasene mazu du simju sanji den sung yore ba, sung ba dili ya tanga zo simju je du sine jeba je du dunga yimba hawa dunga de gyue dunga da chaba duje dunga yimba ngoche dunga de gyudi kunju denpa la tene yungu yoba de ngoche na kunju denpa de yang zo dazen marik ba di pangpe pangpa kokten yoba de ngoche tene dela tene ane di top tugu yoba de ha goya du sanji ge sungpa de ngone ran denpa resha sebe sanji sung de zawa de noche zawa gine mindu wa sanji sung de ngone ran denpa de ngote zawa de mindu sebe tene ha goya du sanji sung de miluwa imba ha goya re ejel miluwa imba
To look at this quotation, or to present the meaning of the quotation now in a summarized form, in a brief form, the object of the object of attainment, this is definite goodness, the term that was introduced in the paragraph above, or as we'd normally have it expressed as liberation. And the method, the technique to achieve definite goodness is training in the Four Noble Truths, the realization of the Four Noble Truths. And this was taught by the Buddha in a faultless manner, without error. And this has, for the practitioner, this has been understood in dependence on first coming to know suffering. The three types of suffering, the suffering of physical mental pain, the suffering of transient pleasure, and all pervasive suffering. This has been known, not just understood, but realized in a transformative manner. This then, in dependence on the power of that understanding, has led to the practitioner to come to understand the causes of suffering that need to be abandoned. The contaminated karma, which is accumulated through afflicted minds, which have as their root cause ignorance. And that ignorance, that consciousness, that root cause being an ignorance, a wrong consciousness, can be abandoned through the cultivation of its antidote. And therefore, cessation of suffering is possible. Liberation can be attained through the cultivation of the path, through engaging in the cultivation of true paths, training in the Four Noble Truths. This the Buddha taught, and his teaching was without error. That then is the meaning of this quotation.
Denige da sanji denige ngejun da ngejun topjige tablan tembi lungdi chema imba chede lung chema sigoro lung chema imba sanji sungdi da dönda mano takta imba thago de lung chema sigoro denige sanji sungdi da chema imba de miluwa imba da manzuge semlya chema ngeba di hago yodu ane gar dine gar hago san o da sanji jumden de saydi koronga nyamnyo thone sungshabege 마노와 다 기부 체마레 노아균이 민두 집에 상기디 당원에 송아디 그런 냠뇨는 송셰베 당원에 덴바레 상기에서디 노아의 초균이 민두와 선비게 상기디 기부 체마 임바된 가서 통통으로 하고 도그리 해제래 지나디 겨울음치 송야들라 덴비게 체미 기부로 통하나 세제사 덴바 상기 점내데 체미 기부 임바하고 도그리 해제
Continuing to marry the commentary in the paragraph above with this quotation from Dhammakati. So when the practitioner comes to realize the sequence of trainings that will lead to the rise or the attainment of definite emergence, an actual path in their continuum, they will have realized a valid scripture, or they have realized the validity of scripture with a valid cognizer. This point, they will also have realized, and now looking at the commentary from His Holiness, that same sentence, that Buddha, who taught these valid scriptures, in other words, the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha who taught from his own experience is a valid being. So that is the meaning then of this term we have in this line of commentary. If Buddha is thus seen as a valid being, whom without error taught definite goodness. So here, just to repeat, having come to see the validity of the scriptures, of the teachings of the Buddha, the practitioner has come to realize that the Buddha is a valid being because he taught unmistaken or flawless teachings based on his own experience.
And the nigger does on your gymnasium soon the lung chema imba, San Yu Jumnendi, Gibu Chema imba de Tonga de, then San Yu Jumnedelia, no one, San Yu Jumnendi, Girinda, San Yu Jumnendele, Debarama Bagiada, the Ungo Regere. She's a San Yu Jumnendi, the Sua de Nansula, the Tarbigo, Toyagi, Tablam Tarbasia de Kukuri Dunga, and Chasalea, and Dunga Sego Wars, Chesan, then Gargos in Tingi Dewa, Mele de Kuor das. Then Ele de Gune, Ele de Nichiling, Ele did like this. Chesan Ele Torial, Tablam Digino, Gongo, Johnson Yam, Denichi, said Sanji Sumwadi, that Karjan Sungorasene, Sanji Korongan to Sumwadi, Sanji Jumden, Damyada Chimboyada, in Benjura, and the Sungo, Marchesan around to let's see Wangi. Also, let's say you won't get Simjan Tam Jeda, Dunhadan Jaje, Nele de Topudu, Dunala Chapus, and Big Dunga Nawatilia, Ansole Niji Wong somebody, Chesada Niji Wong Sumbazinza, somebody, Chesada Sanya Jimden, Di, Anzuki, Danda, Korongi, Yamnenche, Yamyong Tony, Manso Sung, Mazi Wong somewhat bear, Masetasim Sanya Jimden, Anzulia, getting Chimboda, Tin Chimboda, Shiuchia, Sambigeda Sanya Jimden. Then you want to get them bubble, get not a short to give us on your gymnasium, Sambida Delia, Anzuki, Yisheta, and the Delia, and the Jamrokia, and Labrakia. The names are the Kewal, the Dangan to Cargo, 다 상기 좀는 디기 아주 동화 세기 동화 타르바생 헬레서 디니시레 좀 어체 디 토비에게 탑람들라 상이가 숭바디 숭샤바디 당 아주 디 냠는 마진다 그디나 토여요 말했어 제가 당 아주 대님 인지 민지 제고도 선배다 다디 마진다 지금 상이 좀는 디기 아주를 제 공개 되네기 숭바디 아주 냠는 마진다 아주에 노출이 아주를 경을 아주 경단 거 다디 냠네 제가 인지 민지 제고도와 선배가 소소게다 삼노나로도 삼다제 냠네 제야야 아니 제고래 세팅은 랍질레다 디레다 돈다 네, 대대 뭔도 심해하다 뭐가는 그냥 해야 말해. 저는 뭐가는 시
Coming to recognize the validity of scripture, realizing the validity of scripture by way of valid cognition and realizing thereby that Buddha Shakyamuni himself is a valid being, leads to an unshakable conviction in the Buddha and his teachings, as well as, because these come together, the clear recognition that definite goodness or liberation is attainable. So all of this will have long been known by the practitioner, but not in the way that it is now, that valid cognitions have realized that the scripture is valid, or the teachings of the Buddha, as well as, and therefore Buddha is a valid being. The conviction that has arisen now is transformative. It's no longer a mere theory that, yes, this is possible, but this understanding is now truly transformative. The practitioner knows for themselves, I can do this, I can do this. And they will draw strength in the Buddha himself, knowing that as a valid being, he's taught based on his own experience, solely out of compassion. There was no self-interest in his teachings. He was a perfected being. He only taught so as to benefit others, as the fulfillment of his compassion. This then gives us unshakable refuge in the Buddha and in his teachings. And with this comes the recognition that liberation or definite goodness is achievable by me. I can do this. And now, whilst I have this opportunity, I must put it to good use. If I do not, it will be such a tremendous loss, because I can do this. It is not beyond me. It's not something that I can put, that there's any need to delay. I can do it, and I must do it right now.
아드네 지오마들라 샹라치소 바바 인세시 다디 디고 마셔래
And then the second line in the quotation, it can be inferred with regard to others.
다 샹라치소 바바 인세데 가서 다 상유 점된 디게 디시 딘시 네루 송야디 아니 녜중다 녜레다 아니디 토지게 탑 딘시 네루 송야디 아주 제바제나 안아주 또 두고도와서 제산다 아나 상이기 송야리아 지 신도 고교 안주게 또 마토비게 다 제바제 류율에 대해서 아주 제바주에 있는 신도 고교 망부 송요래서 상유 송요로 봤다 디소 안주 가는 사고 두고래서 남나 다 상이들이야 샹라치소 바바인 샹시도 문주당 고교니를 그 준세 고유니를 샹 신도 고교서 딘디 신도 고유 된데라 룽 참아 이시 룽그 상이 송비 룽라 이시비고네 아니 제바 또 그래 이시게 참아 이시비고네 아니 이시 제바가 또 그래 사지 송거데 샹라치소 바바인 세도 문주당 준세 고유니를 샹비게 상이 송제베 신도 고교되게 아 저기 상이 송라 이체비 룽라 때네 아 저기 이체비 제네 또 호레스 마도 제가 좀 원주당 아니 중시 고 제바 제네 또툭 말에 디또 마도면자다 상이 손도 받이 이시다라 이시 제제네 이시 제바 끼오레스 또 호레스 오레.
To understand then the second line of the quotation, it can be inferred with regard to others. What has to understand the second line, first we just refer back to the initial line. So principal meaning refers to definite goodness or liberation. So the attainment of liberation is a hidden phenomena. It can only be understood through reasoning. Now it has been understood, and not just understood intellectually, but by means of valid cognition, which has led to an unshakable trust in the Buddha as a valid being, and his scriptures, his teachings, as being valid as well. So therefore, what was initially a hidden phenomenon, definite goodness, has now been understood to be possible through the use of analysis. This then means, so that's the link to the first line, this then can be inferred with regard to others. In other words, because what was initially hidden to myself has become, I know is possible to realize, therefore, other phenomena that are still hidden to me, so this is the class of phenomena called extremely hidden, as opposed to definite goodness, which would be slightly hidden. What is extremely hidden, and the Buddha taught in many sutras, I can have trust in, I can have conviction that those teachings about the extremely hidden phenomena must be correct too.
진비 냠는 제외나 치말량도 롱주 중그레 세야지 때 진바 데니스 땅바나 롱제 데니스 중그레 세야지 제선이게 송샤로 롱주 중그레 세 제가 데니 중화데 때 진바 땅할 때 롱주 기디 중그레 뒤제 롱제 간스 중그레 체중 간스 리게레 뒤제 간스 리게레 세야디 아주 신도 고겨 차려와 대수 차사 산지기 롱라데 이시세는 냐바냐 호레세 이시세 당한테 롱디 가르지 빼네 롱디 진바 땅할때 롱주 중그레세 배상이 송들어와다 제가다 진바 땅에 롱주 중그레세 데 롱주 중화디 산지 송다를 이시세세 아주 냐바냐 호레세 이시 롱라데 냐바냐 바레스 이시 준네지 제가다 이시 제바데야 롱들라 산지 송제 탐제라 산지 송레선 다랑 켈는 디기를 디야 말레세 산지 송 인제 탐제라 이시제 제네 다 이시젠 또 투그레스 디 마레스 이시제기 룽딜라 이 룽딜레 제바 숨이 다비 룽칭 호레스 제바 숨이 다바 제바 숨이 괜시드 제바치드 괜매가지고 그래스 데니기 괜매비 룽디나 제바 숨이 다비 룽레 룽델레 데네 안 된다데 다가라레스 이시시는 게 바니 투그레스 제나 룽딜레 제바 숨이 다메나 안데 룽레 숨바 잠기 저기 이치치 제네 네바 된다리 네바 니 두고 또 말해서 그렇다.
Just to briefly recap what was said in the previous segment, through having generated the recognition that the Buddha is a valid being, as are his teachings, as his teachings too are valid, through having come to recognize the slightly hidden phenomenon that liberation is possible, one can then have trust or conviction in extremely hidden phenomena that have been taught by the Buddha in scripture, because those are still beyond the establishment of one's intellect. So the illustration that is usually given is the statement in scripture that from generosity, material comfort follows. So this is widely said, and there are other such statements. And for ourselves, whilst that we can perhaps understand to a degree, it's really well beyond us to say that what was the cause that led to a particular result that is being experienced. Moreover, when precisely was that cause accumulated and in what circumstances. So these are extremely hidden to us. But now the practitioner who has come to recognize the Buddha as being a valid being and that his teachings he has realized their validity as well through valid cognition, will have a strong trust in these other scriptures or other sutras which are establishing extremely hidden phenomena, presenting extremely hidden phenomena, such as from generosity comes material comfort. That being said, though, this acceptance of other scripture is not done blindly, but rather those scriptures must also be established as correct through seeing that there's a particular phrase that the scripture or the teachings of Buddha are purified by three kinds of analysis. Only teachings by the Buddha that are purified through these three kinds of analysis or not refuted by three kinds of analysis are to be accepted. And in this way, extremely hidden phenomena, things that cannot be known to us ordinary beings, can be accepted.
It's not that jeba sum sire jeba sum na dangbo de la anjung tong ngonjur tembe jala jeba chi de ngosum gi neba mena ani jeba chi da ba jwa jeba gyun me ba tona jik jik ore jeba da ba ji aden ma juji ko gyur tembe ge ngodob jeba gi jeba chene neba mena ani jeba ni da ba wa da lung shanda ge nugu minde nugu dugu minde jeba chena lung shanda ge neba me ba na dini jeba sumi da ba re dini lung di da jeba sumi da bi lung re chesa lung di dönda de la ma ju ge lung de la da garang song ba da gar re sin yi chen de ji go re ji de tong wang ju de ba de la ni jeba chene gyun me na ni jeba da ba ji tong wang ju de be ngo sum che me ge ne ba me ba re jeba da ba ji dene ya ngo do jeba ge jeba che je ne ba me na ani junse ko kyo tembe chala ne ba me ba jeba da ba re 다 룽 현다기 상제 코롱 송제비 룽 현다기 누기 뒤면도 제바제 룽 현다기 누비 룽메나 되네 디시 룽데 제바스면 다 와래지.
Again, just to briefly recap and then come to what Kenda said. So, the practitioner now, having recognized the Buddha as a valid being or realized as such, and through coming to have recognized that the phenomena that are slightly hidden are correct as presented by the Buddha, then the practitioner can accept that extremely hidden phenomena exist in the way that the Buddha has taught. For example, from generosity comes follows material comfort. But those scriptures in which this is stated still need to be analyzed. And as long as they are not contradicted or refuted by the threefold analysis, they can be accepted. So then what is that threefold analysis that is applied? Firstly, that what is stated is not contradicted by a direct valid cognizer, for what one can observe in a manifest, in other words, what one can observe in a manifest manner. So that's the first. The second, not contradicted by way of an inferential cognizer, and of the different kinds of inferential valid cognizers, particularly the inferential valid cognizer by the power of the fact. So that's the second. The first, again, was not by a direct valid cognizer, not being contradicted by what one can observe through a direct valid cognizer. Secondly, not being contradicted by an inferential valid cognizer by the power of the fact. And then thirdly, not contradicted by another scripture, another sutra.
나베네 상이기 최담제 덴바주바레 세 송여와 제자다 상이 최담제 덴바주바레 송비기 송기 칙 송바인자 다가랑아 최담제 덴바주바레 세네 이제 제나 지고르 베세네 다디 이치비 체메 또 투구를 배선 또 투구 말해지 상기 최탐지 덴바주바레 신 송셰비기 식다라 상기 송요레 최탐 덴바주바레 그래서 상기 송요레 세드 김천 제제 디니 최탐 덴바주바디 이또 이치 또 투구를 해선 네 투구 말해지 그래서는 내려야 모두 제박이 누구래 제래 지다 상기기 최탐지 덴바주바레 제 송화 될야 안주기 최탐제 덴바주바레 다 말에 심주기 제바 있나 당은 저게 다두주바레 샤신의 다두주바세 최탐제 다두주바 송화들에 직제 제바 있나 당은 덴바주바라 나리도 제바 있나 파제바진에 덴바주나 가르고스네 갈라야마도바 랑궁은이 두고고레세 다돈 제위스네 니고고레세 지사당은 저도 제바진 딘진 제와 중화 삼다 제용도 갈라 강라에 맞도바 랑원을 주바디 매바 통고래 제상 강라에 맞도 랑원을 매바 통 현실을 뛰는 주바 통고를 봐 제상 상기기 최담지 덴바 주바레 송와디 모두 제게 제바 제여도 누구도와 그래서 송바 나신 다가랑 통금도 마수 되 독소 통고가 제당 모두 제백에 체면 누구래서 녀바 인자 상기기 송 덴바 주바레 송샤베 다가랑기 이시제장 안쪽에 돈다 덴바주바디 20에 세면이 두고 말해. 그래서 제바지 모두비 제백이 세면 제바지도 제바 세면 누구도 와서 왔다.
So to give an illustration, the Buddha taught that all phenomena exist truly. So this can be found in many sutras, that phenomena are truly existent. Here then, one needs to investigate that sutra to see if it stands up to the threefold analysis. And of the three, it does not stand up to the second type, which is that of an inferential cognizer by the power of the fact. Because if phenomena were self-existent, then the self by which they exist should be findable, except it's not. And this can be known by the practitioner through an inferential valid cognizer.
Yes. 나야 중지고기 뇌바지 재산 제바 직마다바 차송하데 덴바주 최대 덴바주바레 송시베 도디 송디 제바 지기 다규민도 가서 모두 제바기 체면 뇌바 매바지 뇌바 두와 뇌바 통두와 난니 니바디 이제 룽기 뇌바 매바 말해서 룽기 뇌바 요래서 가리요서는 상기 코로랑기 최탐제 라신이 마주바레스 데마 마주바레 송셰기 망보어와 제사 상기 덴바주바레스 송에 다가라는 케일네 최 덴바주바디 네반 체면 이투야요 말 그래서는 상기 코로랑기 최탐제 데마 마주바레 송셰야래 제사 디치니디 덴바주바레스 송드나 데마 마주바스 송이디 가도책으로 덴바주바레 송데라 데마 마주바레스 송디기 누고로와 제사 이 룽기 뇌바 매바 말에 룽기 뇌바 요래 제사 이시 룽기 제바다와 네바 룽기 뇌바 매바 말에 제사 뇌바 가서 제바다와 말에 제사 제만이 가서 다바 책민도와.
Moreover, with the same illustration, the sutras that state that phenomena do exist by way of their own nature are truly existent. These are not only can these be refuted by an inferential valid cognizer by the power of the fact, but they can also be refuted by other sutras, because the Buddha also taught that phenomena are not truly existent, but are empty of true existence. So therefore, the statement that found in sutra that the Buddha taught that phenomena are truly existent, exist by way of their own nature, can be refuted by two of the three reasonings, or two of the three types of analysis.
중간에 최점제 덴바 주바레 가르선 사기 송도와 세베 송델의 이치베 토네 만족이 아니 최점제 덴바 주바 임바디 이치베 치메 김에바니에 또투야 오마레스 가르선 사기 최점제 덴바 주바레 세베 송델라 덴바 주바레 송바델야 안 제바 숨이 다바 롱마레 제바 숨이 다바 차고 말 덴바 주바 송이 차데 덴비 차델라 제바 숨마 다 차고 말 디네자 데 델레티네 이치기 계기 롱디 마레스 다 가르레스나 저기 짐바다 와라드는 롱주 중그리에서베 사이에 숨디 제바 숨이 다바레스 지산디 저기 짐바다 와라 롱주 중그리에서베 지어야디 이체비게 다 죄는 이체 쇼그레스 그래서는 사이에 데니게 숨들이야 제바 숨이 다바레스 우리다.
Taking the two statements from Sutra, firstly, that phenomena are truly existent, they exist by way of their own nature. This, it would be mistaken to accept such a sutra because it can be refuted by means of the threefold analysis. So therefore it hasn't, again to use the words or the term, it cannot be purified by way of the threefold analysis. Whereas the other statement, that from generosity comes material comfort, this cannot be harmed by the threefold analysis, and therefore such a statement about an extremely hidden phenomenon can be accepted.
다 제바치디 아니 뭐도기 제바기에 괜 통고 말에 다하라 지게 괜 통고 내와요 말에 다 룽게 내요 말에 그래서는 사이기 짐바탄라데 론주 중고 말에 세베 사이 코로 손셰게지 매래 제가 매바래 매바서 룽게 내베 룽에 매바래 제가다 무슨 체매에 미네 대중지 고교 템베찰라 뭐도 제바 참하게 미네 되네 아니 신도 고교 템베찰라 룽게 이지 룽게 내바 매바인자 다 짐바당 원로주 중그리에서 상유 송디 제바 숨이다 빌롱레스 제가 되네자 다 먼저 짐베기 땅을 제부 마오반의 중그리 중말에 세팅 하는 저기 또 마토베는 상유 송 다라라 이체네 이체네 다 중그리에서 타주 두고래 제네 제 이치게
Yeah, then I hope you see this sequence that through training in coming to understand sufferings, its causes, and the path that is possible, and really seeing the validity of all this, and thereby recognizing that definite goodness is attainable, is possible, that one, in dependence on that conviction, sees the Buddha as a valid being and his teachings as valid as well, the scriptures as valid as well. One then can look at other statements in this Buddhist teachings about not just hidden phenomena such as selflessness, but also about extremely hidden phenomena such as generosity. From generosity comes material comfort, something that us non-Buddhas cannot establish in fine detail for ourselves. And we come to recognize this based on our prior developed conviction in the Buddha, but still using analysis. In this case, the threefold analysis, recognizing that this particular sutra cannot be harmed either by manifest valid cognition or direct valid cognizer, or an inferential a valid cognizer of the manifest, nor an inferential valid cognizer through the power of the fact, nor through a contradictory scripture. So in this way, one can have conviction in the statements of the Buddha that establish extremely hidden phenomena.
아디네 자다 나로 주기 신도 고규기 리디 다 상기에 숨기 롱라 이시진에 개반야리 사실도 나디 숨고로와 대시 당주 중세 고기다電子 템바딩 언저 제바치네 체명에 반예시르와다 다 되네니 마투게다 신도 고규디 가르치기래라나 제자 상기에 숨 제바 숨이데 비 롱라 되네 이시비관데 또 그래서 이시 제바가 또 그래서
So looking at the text again, that paragraph we've referred to a couple of times from His Holiness's commentary. This is referring to hidden phenomena such as a definite goodness, and establishing and that we can establish for ourselves something that's hidden for us, but we can come to establish it through reasoning, and in dependence on that we can gain conviction, now to the quotation, we can be inferred with regard to others. In other words, we can develop stable conviction or trust in extremely hidden phenomena, or the teachings of the Buddha about extremely hidden phenomena.
이시제로 밤에기 결혼 디니치리 깨바레스 밤에기 데 세라다 데면 디니기 델야 데 밤에기 결혼 디니 뒤수 디니치리 깨바레 세바데 다라 이시제제 깨바레스 샤마도 디케와 마레 디키 김세 시제 디임비 김세 마임비 김세 시에스 셰투에스 가요 말어 제자디 아주게 기세디 밤에기 기실레 이시제로다 안에 밤에 계시 안에 밤에 다 맹가리나 야사이나 맹가이나 다디 디급수도 게디비 밤마다 아니 맹백이 다 지가 이게 돼봐들 다가라 이시에마도 나들이 껴 말에 진예를 껴와래 지지를 껴와래 주다다 말해서 간주 제밖에 가고 싶어 말다들.
This technique that's presented here is actually something that we do employ in our daily life, that people throughout society employ. For example, if I were to ask any of you, when were you born? You would give me an answer. If I was to ask you, where were you born? You would give me an answer. But you haven't established that directly through your own observation. You've established that in dependence on your trust or your conviction in your parents. And thereby, when they tell you that you were born in a particular hospital in a particular area, you believe them. You have trust because you trust your parents. And likewise, when they say, and this is your birthday, you were born on this day, this month, and this year, you believe them. You have no direct memory of this, or there's no direct perception, you have no direct perception of this, but you trust your parents. So this is how we actually employ the same technique in our daily life.
디나제 릭망보여로 앞에는 저기 소수규라 나세 데니스도 세데 데니기 나세 데나 나 저기 다 나세 가려다 직 나기도 숨마다 디 나세기 끼엔 규디 가리임에 간주 하고 두고 말아 데 멤비기 따시네 멤비 호라셰 결혼 나세 데니시 규긴 데니시 레샤세데 멤비 랍교디게 다가라 나주 이시제네 디레 라마도 아주게 제바체네 디레슨 또 토예스 게메르바 제가 멤비 시교도 이시 다가라지 제가 원고 오면 되게 되는 팽기레세데 그 맹기 맨이 된캔디 고조 심주지 고조 다가랑 아주 이지제마도 소송 아주 있는 맨디게 팽기를 간스 팽기래 간스 가고를 가르치고서 김체나 제바체는 하고요 말아봐 그분이 곧맨 쇠간다 심주지 혼주게 해야 될 다가랑 아주 이시제고로 와 이지제네 다가라레선 켈린제 누구로 와 이날 배낭아 저기 야손 마손에 봐 토셀 마손이 띵띵데 쇼레서 나 저기 제바제제 또 투에 가면 배는 소소라 삼다베 다고 미니 제바지기 미지기 되는 제바제 그 다가라 이시제로 와 그애들 이시제네 거 나중에 다가라레서 켈린 누구로 와 제사다 지게 점령 고고를 해야 되다 안지게 지금 점령이 두수 꼬라게 거라서 돼 나라 저기 나로부터 소소한 삼단은 디 녀바 체매 녀가 말와다 그 천직 비기 따지지의 심주도 건조시에 잡았다 건조시에 다하라 이시진 어디 점령 고고래다 점령 디스코라게 거다 진의 시고르마도 소수게 체매 짐주체 제바지 녀바니네 디교 말이요 제가 천직 비기 제바지 건조래 이시 건조 시기들이 이시에 더 내가 저기 다 죄전 현주고로 시고로 와다
And just to really emphasize how we commonly employ this technique in society, when a feeling arises within oneself, a suffering feeling, a suffering physical feeling, all we know is that I'm suffering. We may be able to describe the suffering we're feeling, we'll be able to identify where it is, but this is all we can do with confidence. Beyond that, we can make some guesses, but with confidence, we can say, I'm feeling lousy, my stomach's like this, or my head is like that. That's all we can do. We then go to someone who we trust. And then she will diagnose us, maybe do a few tests, and then a diagnosis will be presented. And independent on our trust in her, we'll accept that diagnosis and the following prescription and take our medication. And moreover, the medical practitioner, she will have trust in that medication. She didn't create it. She didn't do any of the research and may well not have read any of the research. But she has trust in the manufacture, in the process of approving the medication and so forth. And therefore, she will, with confidence, prescribe that medication, which we too, with confidence, will take. Although all these steps, there is so much that is unknown, but in dependence on prior cultivation of conviction or trust, then we believe what is presented to us. Likewise, the ocean has largely been mapped, and therefore the depth at various parts are known. How do we know this? Us as individuals, we have no idea, but we believe whatever branch of science this is, who says in this particular area the ocean goes to a particular depth, we say, the ocean goes to such a depth over there. But we have no way of being able to directly observe that for ourselves, observe it manifestly for ourselves. Similarly, talking for myself, that whether the world is flat or round, I don't know, but people that I trust, they tell me it's round, so I accept it is round. So this is a technique that we utilize in society a lot.
Kyoran yinpi yumza kare labne tsendik pe shegidu lan ma di ma do merwa tsendik pe shegidu laro ta tsendik pe shegidu sibe tsendik pe de la zo yichi goro ba chezan tsendik pe she de yichi ba de karasena kono zo tsendik pe gi da bene nga zo ge na mendi sana na za di mendi di na za jagire sibe ge ko zo je jikshi yo de ta nga zo yichi je na sa yo de andi na za di ge jaba di mendi sa je na za de jaba de so so nyamnyo de na ha go goro ba 제사한테 냠냠도 다 하고 다 거의 건주기 시교디 대신에 맨디사나 나서 자기에서 셰바디 덴바 임바디 신하고 두고 왔다 거죠. 제사 당보디 이치기 다 줘봐래. 얘네 지수가 저기 디멘디사에 냠냠토네 수수 잡아야다. 어다 거의 셰바디 원에 덴바레샤스비 데디고로. 디나신다디 제사 디네기 천리벌이 이내 아직 천리베샤다 천리보 거로제 직시에 딱다 마티바제 제마디와셰 디네네 켈링고 말고 그 무디네 차림바 카시지 강사 당보게 따시체 디나신지 강사 니버게 따시체 디나신 강사 숨버게 따지체네 디림바치네 타메 타줘데라 아니 디레샤 템비치고로 디나신 다 템비치와제 템부로체 데레 이치치고로 제자 다 강사 당보디게 따시 디레샤세 베게 타초베네 니버디게 따시체네 데이터 책임에는 당보셔야 된 말에 세대 당한 저기 참마숨이 녀바나시 책으로와 진짜 당보에 니번이기 다시 된바지 숨바디게 다시는 당보니 셰바나 딱다지 책임에는 어디에 딱다 책임은 있으면 이지 제일 말와 제가 천리비게 땜비 제야들라 강사 당보지기 다시 니바 숨비 강사 되네게 다시네 타메 타주들 좀지 숨과를 찍바 차어도 되네 어디 땜비 지고로 딘 참마숨이 많이 봐 녀바미아바 통한 딘한신시 차고도와
And I encourage you then to think about this and take the illustration of trust that one has in the field of science and the scientists within that field, and look at the sequence of dependency that was required for that trust to be created. Because if you think about it, the mere fact of us going to a scientist or a doctor, that is done, certainly the first time one will see a particular doctor is done on trust. One really has no idea about this particular doctor. And moreover, if we're taking medication that we have no experience of, there's only just trust in that doctor and in many other parts of the process that will lead to us taking that medication or following that course of treatment. Only once we've experienced the benefit of a particular medication or treatment could we say we have direct experience of that particular medication or treatment. Before that, we would have needed to rely on the threefold analysis on the other two. Firstly, that there was no manifest contradiction. Secondly, that in terms of an inferential valid cognizer, in dependence on our reasoning, the advice or the analysis from the doctor of our illness, it didn't sound ludicrous to us, and based on our own knowledge. So therefore, it wasn't contradicted by the second fold analysis, that of an inferential valid cognizer. And then thirdly, it wasn't refuted by other studies that could be found, so like the scriptural refutation. So therefore, we can have some trust and conviction and take and follow the advice. And moreover, we can go further back. Why does one trust scientists or a particular field of science or this particular scientist or doctor? And there one can look back at further causes that led us to have trust in this person or in this field or in this technique. And in this way, one can come to see how we can give rise to a stable trust or a conviction that is reliable or valid. And the last point to make here is that this trust, once established, still needs to be re-established. Just like in the world, trust can be broken. That prior, the trust may have been reliable, but if, let's say, towards a particular doctor, if their advice no longer is reliable, trust in that doctor now cannot be established in those three ways. It will be broken. So in this way, through thinking in this way, we can see how we do already rely on this threefold reasoning. So we'll conclude there for this evening, and we'll continue with the next quotation from tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Did you watch yours?
Yes, please. Please.
Just when you were talking about the Buddha taught that all phenomena exist truly, that was a rhetorical statement. Is that correct? That was a rhetorical statement rather than a statement of a sutra that actually exists.
Okay, so yeah, so did the Buddha teach that all phenomena exist truly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That was rhetorical.
The Buddha did teach in non-Prasangika tenets, phenomena do exist truly.
Okay.
Yeah. So therefore, and those tenets were established from sutra. So therefore, the Buddha taught.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm a little bit lost there.
Okay. Okay.
I just have a question. When earlier in the teaching, when Geshe was talking about Dhammakirti's text and saying that the three lower schools, Chudamatra and below, they believe in true grasping, whereas and then he said the Prasangika don't. Their ignorance of it is more. Their ignorance is the ignorance of true grasping. It's a more subtle.
Okay.
But Geshe didn't mention the other Middle Way school, or was he talking about not only Prasangika but the two Middle Way schools? Because he mentioned all the schools except Middle Way autonomous.
Yeah, he made no reference to the autonomous school.
Right. So could you ask where that fits in?
Okay. Okay.
Chedamji Demba Drubares. Did you soon open a Semzabala, Semba Chetamjes and other Dujetamjes, Ura, Benededi Kola Dangbonalia, Sungor, the Dodeba, Benesim Dodeba, 되게 바로 시대 최탐제스나 뒤지게 최탐제스야 돼 딱와되게 제가 뒤지게 최되게 다 장신 주바레서 딱돈 제외스 이 템버 주바스 송거로 뒤지게 최다 손에做的 뒤지게 최를 송거 대진이 최탐제스도 최탐제를 뒤시거로 와 나도 콜로 당번 나라 송용 거래 돼 다디디 semzama manjegi demzi denzi sayade lo dundunere la gurwa da dejing dinyane dos chagor da deji ngede sayade azore zoye donla miluchir sayade zoye den denhi ko sheyadu di kunjo debe gyuzo sayade maripa sayade kansa rangyo tubi jela shagor ma de denzin le shi gyo mare yeshero kaze denzin men lo dundunere la gurwa honzuge dinyomo ge gyumarwa jadi kansa dasin mare barangyo tubisu tubisin bada she gore she di she sarwa dadeng nga jeba sumi dabe ko geshe du dadeng tenju be ko ki she sharwa de ka che tam je rangshin yu ba se temba tu ba se de sam da ben jeba na inti temba di ani ko lung chama sumi ni gore je da kelin chu mare se de this many dode ba da disi that the routine ba shi go mare da di lu go ni she ba na ka so 뒤지게 가서 풍보나 간사 다도 주바 사실은 간사 랑여 투비스 주바 간사 랑여 투비스 주바 상여 송여 간사 랑여 투비스 주바 송여 어디 송니 마샤는 지고래 랑여 가래 티티시시메 데 랑주벌 랑신 주변에 최담제 랑신 주발랍진 되기로 랑신 주바세 다들 랑신 주바 랑주벌에 믹스 마신나 되고 셰화스케미나 네 베지 자마다 차상의 셰화스미나
In the first camera, so in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha taught that all permanent phenomena are truly existent. So in the first wheel turn, impermanent phenomena are truly existent. Yeah. So that before Genda said that, he also said that the Chittamatra accept that impermanent phenomena are truly existent, as do Sartre and Tika. Then he went on to say, in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is the wheel turning for the Sartre and Tika and Vaibhashika, there the Buddha taught that all impermanent phenomena are truly existent.
Right.
Okay? Does that answer your question? Because I wasn't sure if it all came out.
Subsequently, the point was made that all phenomena are not ultimately existent.
Yes, according then to the Prasangika.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand.
Okay, good. And then there's Teppel. The consciousness of true grasping, according to Chittamatra, Sartre and Vaibhashika, is a factually concordant phenomenon because they accept that phenomena exist truly. Yeah, and permanent phenomena exist truly. So for them, true grasping is not an ignorance, but it is a factually concordant phenomena. Whereas for Prasangika, they who hold that phenomena do not exist truly, the consciousness of true grasping is an ignorance. It's factually discordant and an ignorance. In terms of Svatantika, there's for the purposes of this commentary, there's nothing that needs to be said on Svatantika, because we look at it from the Prasangika view, but this text that was quoted from is written in accordance with the Chittamatra view. So hence there's no need to look at Svatantika at this point. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, all the autonomists. Okay. No, thank you.